Thank you, President Dye. It is my pleasure today to introduce Jack Machek, the President and CEO of 10,000 Friends of Pennsylvania. 10,000 Friends of Pennsylvania is the leading smart growth advocacy organization in the state of Pennsylvania. 10,000 Friends works with citizens, organizations, and public officials to create land use, infrastructure, and governance policies and practices that protect our resources and strengthen our economy. And Jack will tell us much more about this in his presentation. I know that some of you have already met Jack Machek through your attendance at the 2017 Commonwealth Awards event, which was held in York this past December 7th at the Bond, after being held in Lancaster and Philadelphia in previous years. If you were one of the 200 plus attendees that evening, I'm sure that you agree it was a very impressive celebration of community and economic revitalization accomplishments, as 10,000 Friends of Pennsylvania recognized no less than 25 individuals and organizations, all from York. That same evening, Jack Machek also presented the inaugural Louis J. Appel Jr. Leadership Award, as Louie was a founding board member and longtime benefactor of 10,000 Friends. Jack Machek joined 10,000 Friends of Pennsylvania as CEO in 2010. Over that period of time, the organization has grown in reach and expertise, now has offices in Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. In Jack's previous professional life, he worked at Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, initially as a strategic investment officer for the Governor's Community Action Team, and then later in the role as regional director of DCED's Southwest Pennsylvania Regional Office. Jack has a master's degree in public administration and applied policy analysis, currently serves on the board of directors of Smart Growth America, including Transportation for America, the National Brownfields Coalition, and National Complete Streets Coalition. To hear more, please help me welcome Jack Machek.
Thank you and good afternoon. President Dye, members, Frank, I want to thank everyone for including me and inviting me, and I'm pleased to be here. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our organization and also talk a little bit about our recent celebration and why we did it, and show you some things that we, as I'm sure you're familiar with, that happened in York that we celebrated, and also tell you a little bit about our current and planned work. 10,000 Friends, as Frank said, is a nonprofit organization. We have a presence in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Harrisburg. As Frank said, I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm based in Harrisburg. That's our vision statement. We believe in helping local government, citizens groups, nonprofit groups, public-private partnerships, private companies and actors to create great communities for all Pennsylvanians to live and work in. And our definition of great communities is a definition that's driven locally by the communities themselves and their members. And what we would promote, and I think that those communities have several elements that have in common, which I will discuss later in a future slide. But we believe in a built environment that is planned and built for maximum attractiveness, sustainability, economic competitiveness for all Pennsylvanians and all residents. Where residents find opportunity, share the benefits of Pennsylvania's commitment, hopefully to competitiveness through strategic investment and sustainable growth. So what we do, both at state agencies and state government in Harrisburg and also locally with counties, municipal planning organizations, and municipalities, is we try to defend and expand the public resources that are necessary to execute local visions and plans and projects. We try to produce research and information that will help inform and improve the investment philosophy and investment decisions by government and public stakeholders. We advocate for increased quality investment in our public infrastructure and other public assets. And we encourage accountability, like I said, to community visions that respects the local vision for their community and its traditions and history, and helps them create the next iteration and generation of that for future generations to come. And we also try to link all of those actors who are like-minded and together, and that brings us a little bit to our recent Commonwealth Awards event. So our services, to be more specific, we do with partners, because we don't have a large staff, but with partners we do some research and policy development, public policy work, both analysis and policy development. We do community engagement and education. We do network building and promotion. It's kind of linked to the community engagement. They try to link the professionals, coalitions, and actors who are doing this kind of work in the field together to amplify the impact. And we also do both direct issue advocacy on policy issues before state agencies, and on occasion, but not much recently, on legislative issues. And we also provide direct technical assistance services to principally to municipalities, mayors, their administrations, authorities, community development corporations. So, like I said, in the vein of trying to promote good work and build networks and link together actors who are like-minded and doing good things, we undertook our 2017 Commonwealth Awards program, which is a 20-year-old program that honors plans and real estate development projects in the built environment that are exemplifying the kinds of policies and visions that we're trying to promote. And with all of the recent development that's happened in York in recent years, we have a long historic connection to York. We've had 4 or 5 board members over the years that have been from York. One of them in the audience today, Eric Menzer. As Frank said, Louie Jr. was one of our founding board members, our principal private benefactor, meant so much to our organization in so many ways. We've had a lot of other board members from York, including Charlie Backus, Eugene DePasquale, former Mayor Bracey was a board member. We have a long history in York, and we also have some new friends with Frank and others that we've been working with on some of our more recent projects, and have previously won awards from us for their previous work. So we decided to bring our recent, in December, our award ceremony to York, and I thought I would show you. What was really great about it is we had, as Frank said, numerous projects from York, and it was really great to have all the folks in one room together who have worked on all these projects, whether they're the architects or engineers or financiers, developers, the folks who had a part, the public stakeholders, the public-private partnerships, the private companies, the real estate companies, to have them all in the room together to celebrate each other's projects and how together they're making not only great progress, but making some more than the parts in downtown York. So can I ask just how many folks happened by chance to be there? So not a lot. So this will be helpful. I'm just going to run through some photos. These were the projects that were undertaken in recent years that we awarded all on the one night of December 7th in York. So the first thing, the Opportunity for All Award is focused on providing opportunities for socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged neighborhoods and populations. Typically that might include connections to opportunity, job opportunities, better educational opportunities, or affordable housing opportunities, better clean, safe housing opportunities. So the first thing we honored was the Salem Square Neighborhood Initiative. You can see the partners there. The Salem Square Library, the affordable housing, some of the green space improvements that are done and are planned in that neighborhood adjacent and near downtown. We also awarded the homes at Paxton Park under this category, which is a project with York Housing Authority in a partnership with Cone Inc. Also right near downtown. We also have a history of awarding planning projects. The Vision 2020 plan that the City of York adopted was one that we think provides a good direction for the city and its downtown. This one's a little older, and it's become to fruition, and it was kind of like a look back to see how good planning could have an impact. But the West Market Street Revitalization Action Plan, West Market Street downtown, as you all know, being a place where a lot of recent activity has happened, including through RSDC and others. Sprung from a planning effort years back from Better York and Murphy and Dittenhafer, who did the plan and work to survey vacant buildings and conditions and kind of talk about a reuse plan and the economic feasibility thereof. That has actually borne a lot of fruit. We also award public infrastructure projects. In this case, the York City Heritage Rail Trail Development, that again, Downtown Inc., York County, the City of York, the York Rail Trail Authority, the college, and the York County Community Foundation all worked on with other players together. We also, again, honor residential projects. There have been several of those, of course, downtown, including the Keystone Color Works properties, distinct property management. And our typical bread and butter project that we always try to identify are several mixed-use projects, which may include commercial, retail, office, some housing. We honored Warehouse, the Ware headquarters at the Northwest Triangle, and obviously with Kinsley Construction. One West, right on the square, Beyond Property Management. And we also honored the good work of community institutions. That one of the things that the city is blessed with is just tremendous civic infrastructure, as evidenced not only by your legacy and robust membership here today, but like the institutions such as the college, Better York, the Community Foundation, and all of the assets working together for the betterment of the community that the City of York has. That as we go on our travels around the Commonwealth, we find that many comparable sized cities do not have. So one of the things that we were really respectful and mindful of was the commitment of York College to increase its presence right in downtown through buying the old former Lafayette Club. The social impact investing and other initiatives, the Community Foundation is, of course, oftentimes frequently a contributor and one investor in one way or another in many of these projects. And then, as Frank mentioned, we had, again, this is also the Think Loud development, United Fiber and Data, the tremendous work they did at 210 York Street with the recording studio, the headquarters for UFD, the work on the building, the investment. Again, a truly exemplary mixed-use project right in the heart of downtown, an asset, again. Not everybody has a rock star from their hometown that comes back and will build a recording studio like this, but if you do, I guess it's a good thing to capitalize on. And then finally, as Frank mentioned, obviously Louie was so involved in everything, and didn't want it to be celebrated, even though everyone knew it was true and happening in his lifetime. And so we thought, just based on what he's meant to us and our organization, that it would be just fitting to create a named award in his honor. And it celebrates exemplary private sector leadership and private sector investment by private firms or individuals who are making a difference in their communities. And the first inaugural recipient was formerly Royal Square Development, and RSDC, and for the many buildings, kind of a bootstrapping, homegrown initiative that just continues to expand and leverage itself, that has done so much good work both in the Royal Square District and now over on West Market Street and other places. So, like I said, when you see all of those together in one slideshow, real quick, all those projects in a couple of blocks concentrated in one city, and all the different folks, public, private, nonprofit, all the actors and people who were responsible for making it happen. It's really, really impressive and really formed a great night to honor all the good work that is happening downtown and has happened and is continuing to happen. And it was really special. It became really a really cathartic community celebration. So that's the kind of thing we do every year. We move to a different city and we try to identify the appropriate places and celebrate the good work and plans and projects that they're doing. And again, it comes under one of our 4 buckets of work to both publicize and shine a spotlight on like-minded folks who are doing good work that we're trying to promote and replicate. and also to build networks of folks who might be interested in becoming involved in advocacy issues or other issues. So, pivoting a little bit on the remaining time that I have, I wanted to talk about two of the other things that we do in addition to the network building and the promotion, and that is a little bit of our research and policy and a little bit of our technical assistance work for communities for, like I said, if it was a place perhaps like York, of York size, but didn't have the local infrastructure that you have, and we try to sort those places out. So we've been doing some work with the George Washington University School of Business in DC, the Brookings Institute, and the Economic Innovation Group, which is a new nonprofit to advocate for, that's set up by entrepreneurs around the country. We kind of look for ways to package, repackage in Pennsylvania specific ways, different things that they're finding. And I want to talk to you, and some of this you might find applicable, and some of this to York or York County. I know York County is growing, but obviously there's different situations for different municipalities in the county. And even given all the recent momentum and success in the city, I wanted to talk to you about some big picture trends in real estate, in the economy, and growth and development in the country that has been identified by these folks who are obviously much larger and much more expert than us. So the first thing is that since 2007 and 8 housing bubble, in the last 10 years, which has been a steady period of expansion since 2010, first of all, to preface this, there are 3,100 counties in the United States, 3,100 counties. Over half of all of the new businesses that have been created in the United States over the last 5 years, the most recent 5 years that we have data, have been created in these 20 counties. 20 counties out of 3,100 counties. Less than 1% of all counties created half of all the new businesses in the United States. And there they are. And many of them are ones that you may know of. This is a map from the Economic Innovation Group. This is the net change in total new businesses from over 5 years, from 2010 to 2014. So if you add all the businesses that opened, started, versus closed or shuttered, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, added them all up for every year, compared the beginning to the end, every place in light gray or white on that map had a net loss of businesses in over 5 years, and every place in dark blue gained businesses. Most counties and 2/3 of the land mass in the United States lost businesses over 5 years during an economic expansion. So that was businesses. Now jobs, actual job growth. The counties in orange on that map are 73 counties around the United States. Those 73 counties created more than half of all the new jobs in the last 5+ years. 2 counties, Philadelphia and Allegheny County in Pennsylvania, are on that map. So, and then pivoting, we're all familiar with the deadlock and our seeming inability sometimes to get political actors to compromise and find out solutions to real problems. The Economic Innovation Group calls this the 70-30 formula. In less than 30 years after the results of the 2040 census, which will be in 2042, exactly about 25, 26 years, but keeping with the 70-30 analogy, in less than 30 years, more than 70% of the entire U.S. population will be in 15 states or less, as if current trends continue. 70% plus of the population will be, therefore, in those 15 states, represented by 30 U.S. senators or fewer. 30% or less of the population will be represented by 70 U.S. senators or more. So all of our our inability to compromise, or hopefully that will change, but to find the middle ground and centrist and compromise on all these issues, including infrastructure and others, is only going to get harder over time, not necessarily easier. And this is a Pennsylvania-specific slide. I was not able to crop it in a way that made it clear, but this is extrapolated from some DCD data and 10,000 Friends' own research. These are all this is a graphic by region, and then the last line on the right, a graphic of all the housing starts versus population in Pennsylvania over the last 35 years, through 2010. So housing starts obviously being mostly overwhelmingly single-family detached homes, new construction of new production of housing units. So principally, overwhelmingly single-family detached homes, but also including condos, apartments, units created by public actors, affordable units, etc. So as you can see, the blue line is the change in the number of new housing units, and the red line is the change in population growth. So over 35 years in Pennsylvania, we have built 2.2 million new housing units. And in that time that we built 2.2 new construction housing units, we've gained 500,000 people. And all of those 500,000 people don't live by themselves, right? Some of them are in families, they have kids, so that might be 300,000 new households, 350,000 new households. So 2.2 million new homes we built, and in that time we gained about 350,000 new households. So for places like our smaller cities, it's a recipe for guaranteed abandonment, guaranteed vacancy, guaranteed blight, right? And you have a situation where everybody's a little like a hamster on the wheel. If you're a mayor of the city, you say, I need money for demolition, I need money for Main Street, I need money for redevelopment, I've got vacancy, I've got blight. And if you're a commissioner in a municipality that's growing, you say, we need new road construction, we need new school construction, we have growth, we have traffic, we need red lights, we need turning lanes, and then until you don't, and then it goes somewhere. So that's so these are the kind of issues that we kind of work on, and the good news is, so when you talk about what does this all mean and how do we address it, so the data has shown recently a convergence of the kind of places that people want to live, the kind of places that companies want to locate or relocate or expand in, and the kind of places that are attracting a lot of private investment. And from Brookings and from these partners that we have from the research and from our own kind of massaging the data Pennsylvania specific and putting kind of things together in a different way, we believe that these places that are attracting investment and growing have these kinds of shared and definable and shared and characteristics. We call them places that are walkable, connected, healthier, equitable, and provide opportunity for all. Those are the kind of places, when you saw those other maps, that have potential to attract jobs, people, and investment. So there are places that have different housing options, where people don't have to leave the community for new people entering the community. I mean, you can read it there. I'm not going to read them all, but there are places that have traditional business districts. There are people that have places that value art and cultural assets, that manage and remove blight, that provide multimodal transportation options, walkability, bikeability. Those are the kinds of characteristics of places that we're trying to promote, and we think we're going to be successful in America in the next 25 years. And that's on, it's like, my dad worked for U.S. Steel for 37 years, and it's like, if I would have come home from school and he, and U.S. Steel said, look, I got a job for you, Mr. Machek in Birmingham, like I might have been in Birmingham instead of Pittsburgh, like by that evening, right? Like in the old days, like whatever the job was, that's where the people went, like wherever the. Nowadays, there's increasing evidence that people, kids, young people, older people find a place that they like to live and want to build a life, and then they try to figure out what to do for a living and where to work once they get there. So these are the characteristics of the places that are attracting residents, the kind of places that Americans are increasingly in surveys that the realtors are finding and everyone. These are the kinds of the places that have these kinds of amenities, and especially if they have more than one, as many of these amenities as possible. These are the kind of places that are attracting residents. On the job growth side, we showed those slides with all the job growth and business creation. Brookings has a methodology which we've kind of tested, we've kind of looked at and believe in, and I'll summarize it real quickly. And I know, so Brookings has basically said that most of the job growth is coming from new industries and new companies that never existed before, right? So nobody had a phone in their car or a cell phone, and then they had a flip phone. It got smaller instead of those big phones. And then Apple invented the smartphone and the iPhone, and then like everybody had a flip phone, had to buy millions of smartphones. Like so, the job growth that you see in those places are from new industries and that never existed before, that maybe people today don't know are going to exist 10 years from now. And so that there's a kind of an ecosystem that you can kind of develop that would maximize your chances of attracting those people and those ideas and those jobs. And they summarize it this way. First is economic assets. Those bullet points there, including what I just said, the kind of places that people want to live in. Two are innovation drivers, and that would be universities, research labs, regionally significant medical facilities or hospitals, large employers with regional or maybe even hopefully national headquarters, large plants, any kind of basis for advanced manufacturing, anybody that puts previous ingredients together in new ways. Those are kind of innovation drivers. And next, entrepreneurs and startup firms. Obviously, there's becoming now people who are involved in creating one company after another. They become serial entrepreneurs. Like I invented one thing, and now that's launched, and now I'm going to try to invent something else. And trying to develop those folks with entrepreneurial centers and tools is important. And I know college just created such a center. And finally, is cultivators. Cultivators include things like incubators, where somebody has an idea can work without having to pay rent. Incubators, accelerators, tech transfer centers, high-tech partnerships, greenhouses, shared workspace, co-workspace, job training centers, industrial development centers, small business development centers, Ben Franklin centers, all those kinds of assets. Those are the kind of assets which would be kind of cultivators to help those kinds of folks. And then there are the physical assets. Public physical assets include parks, plazas, streetscapes, bike lanes, transit, multimodal transportation opportunities, all those kinds of things. Private assets, which is the built environment or buildings that are built by private real estate companies. So the quality of architecture, design, practicality, beauty, lived workspace, all those kinds of things. And then the physical assets that kind of knit the innovation district together, which is things that remove barriers and kind of make the community more connected. And then the last thing is kind of network assets this day and age, broadband access, digital networks, and people networks. Things like the Rotary Club, things like mixers and alumni events for graduates of your college. People that get people together, and they mix and mingle, and they run into each other that maybe they wouldn't have met. So the idea is that if you, and this pivots to the last point, so that's kind of like the research and policy. And then the last point I'm going to make for it, but the question is so 10,000 Friends is involved in trying to give some practical implementation assistance for communities who are trying to position themselves and do this kind of stuff. So what I would say, what we've learned in doing this, and obviously we're not big or expert at it, but what we've learned over the last couple of years is that to develop, if this is, I kind of laid out some elements of a vision or of community characteristics. The question is, we think it's the right, vision for us and for many communities, but it may not be right for you or for a specific community. But every community needs to have a vision, right? It's the old biblical injunction, where there's no vision, the people will perish. But after you do that, and you have a vision that you're trying to implement in your community or your county, it's inventorying your assets along those lines of the previous slides that I just showed and talked about. Inventorying what assets does the community have, forming partnerships, forming collaborations, and then building intelligently on the community's existing assets. And if you don't know where to start, or if you don't have a lot of private investment, it always makes sense. You always can start with the public realm, with public property, and again, the idea is to make the whole more than the sum of its parts, and hopefully I'll know how to turn this on. So that's how, in theory, all works together. And I'll shut up. The policy, the network building, the promotion of good ideas and results, and how we hope to hopefully help folks replicate it by providing some practical implementation assistance. But it's a lot of food for thought, and the thing that strikes me is all the problems that we seem to be having in the country today. It's related to some of the sheer power of the market and money and jobs and the way things are going, and how some folks are feeling that they're the elites, and some folks are feeling how they are slowly or rapidly being left behind, and the country's different from it was for their parents and grandparents. And hopefully our work. We're going to continue to try to do our part in our local world to solve it and make it better. So thanks for having me today. Yeah, any questions or comments or thoughts anybody might have? Yes, sir.
Do you take any positions, you mentioned advocacy, in controversial areas, and if so, for instance, extraction fees for natural gas, that's just one for instance. Do you take positions in those areas, and if so, how do you form, with all of the diversity of your membership, how do you arrive at your position?
We do sometimes.
Could you repeat the question?
I feel like it's not as hard. You say it's controversial, but it's just like we try to call balls and strikes and call them we see it, right? Like the thing with extraction is you don't have to try to stop it. You can support it, but the idea is like it's only in the ground once, and once it's out, it's gone. So the process of having it come out, should there not be some public benefit? And number one, like the classic example is acid mine drainage with coal, right? So the coal's gone, and you don't find out till years later, like, hey, we got this problem that we didn't know we had the day that the mine was the coal was mined. And like, so now, like, the company's gone, the company declares bankruptcy, the company's dissolved, like, who's going to pay? Like, the taxpayers are going to pay. Like, why wouldn't we have a mechanism to build up a nest egg so that the taxpayers don't have to pay? So we've done less and less of it just because, like, we're not as big as ExxonMobil or private companies, and there is so much gridlock where, like, nothing's really going to happen, and they're certainly not going to do it because 10,000 friends came, like, oh, I'm going to run and jump and vote for a bill because 10,000 friends came to my office today, right? So we, as a practical matter of trying to have some impact and try to, like, contribute, we've been on the record in colleges, we've seen it, but have not spent a lot of capital or time on it. The kind of stuff we talked about here is the kind of stuff where we're putting our focus and energy. Yes, sir.
The list of desirable characteristics that you showed included 12 elements. Is that a prioritized list?
No, it's not. It's just 12 categories, 12 buckets. It's not necessarily a prioritized list. And again, I think the idea is to inventory the assets you have, to recognize your strengths and weaknesses, to try to build off your assets in as many different ways together, and to create like clusters of opportunity. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
As you present this, I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't jump on board. Where do you find your resistance, and how do you overcome it?
It depends on what the target is. Like I said, with the legislature, it's money, right? Like there's entrenched camps, and they have funding sources, and that's who they respond to, right? And that's why there's a lot of deadlock, even though there are some common sense solutions on infrastructure. With building communities, a lot of it is a lack of local. We have a lot of municipalities in Pennsylvania, too many, 2,500 municipalities. There's a lack of professional staff and capacity to implement in a lot of places. Like, not in York, which is why we were here celebrating it, not in Lancaster, not in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, but 90% of the municipalities many times don't have professional staff at all. If they have a good person, they leave to go somewhere else. They don't have the capacity. Even if they have the vision and drive that they want to do this or have a different vision for the community, they find it very hard sometimes to implement. And I think that's a place where we can be of some practical help. Yes, ma'am.
How are you finding the ride-sharing economy is impacting public transit?
Yeah, that actually is in a previous iteration that's actually in here, and it's good and bad, right? Like my father's elderly, he's suffering from macular degeneration, and so there's going to come a day where, like, when you don't drive, like, you can order up a car on your smartphone, right? So there's definitely the push-pull of the way that it could potentially provide more and better access to opportunity and for those that have it, but it will have profound impacts on communities that we don't really know yet. So the one question would be, if you can order up a car that's self-driving to commute you to work, does that mean that you're willing to live further away from work because you, in theory, could be answering emails or writing a report while you're being chauffeured? That everybody would essentially have a chauffeur, right? Like, or what's going to happen? I've heard one thing where maybe in the future cities won't need any parking garages because a self-driving car will pick you up, bring you into town to work. And then, like, it's not going to park, it's going to circulate around and try to make money and try to, like, run an app and try to pick up somebody else and take them somewhere else and just, like, circulate around all day. So what would that do for traffic? On the other hand, self-driving cars don't need human reaction time for braking distance, so in theory, they could be like a little train, like 10 feet apart, going 70 miles an hour down the road. Like, you know, so maybe you'd need less lane miles of road. Maybe you would need more traffic. So it's unknown. The community impacts are unknown. The communities up until recently, like I'm familiar with Pittsburgh, like Uber in Pittsburgh have been, even like Carnegie Mellon is a leader in self-driving car technology, but like Uber and Pittsburgh have been at odds over sharing data and lessons learned, and like how can the city learn from Uber about positioning future infrastructure. So it's you know, there are definitely potential. It's definitely going to happen eventually. But it'll be good for some folks. And the other thing is, like, you want to avoid making a self-driving car like a Tesla, right? You don't want it to make it be 500,000 and a toy only for the richest people, and everybody else is still like it never happened. So it's a known unknown, and it's going to be a challenge, and it's one of the issues on our radar screen to be thinking about and maybe working on. Maybe like somebody who comes after me in 10, 15 years, 10,000 friends, that might be their main issue. Yes, sir.
Just a comment, it seems to me what you've described as successful communities is really reverting back to New York of maybe 70 or 80 years ago, where many of the industries were located in the city or right outside, and people walked to their jobs. And which I think is wonderful, and it's too bad we've gone away from that and have industrial parks that transportation's need to get to. It just seems interesting to me.
I think that's true, and I think it is potentially a unifying theme where we could bring more people into our circle. Essentially, the kind of things we're advocating for are traditional neighborhoods and traditional downtowns and small towns like we had for hundreds of years. That's essentially what we're advocating for. Thank you again.